Now, Britain's Defence Minister John Healey and his German counterpart Boris Pistorius signed a defence agreement on Wednesday, the first of its kind between Europe's two biggest spenders on defence, which includes a commitment to develop new deep strike weapons. The two NATO allies said the pact would strengthen their ability to cooperate and conduct exercises on the bloc's eastern flank, improving their deterrence in light of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Under the agreement, the countries will work together on developing new weapons that have a greater range and accuracy than current long-range missile systems like Storm Shadow, which Britain has given to Ukraine. And let me now bring you back to our top story, which is the BRICS Summit, the 16th BRICS Summit, where key pointers have been put out for the entire world, if not for just the BRICS nations and all the partner countries that want to come on board as well, by these leaders who were there for the BRICS Summit, including India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We're joined by our guest, Ambassador Manjeev Puri, former senior diplomat, to talk about it. Good evening, Ambassador. What do you make of how the 16th BRICS Summit has come out to be? The West was, almost in palpitations as to what will happen there in terms of what kind of an anti-Western grouping, what are they going to come up with? But just tell us, what are your impressions about how the BRICS is moving forward? It is for the greater good of everyone, particularly the global South, isn't it?
Gautam, absolutely. And I think you've said it as well as could have been said. Look, let's not look at the BRICS, now much larger than the initial 5 countries, as an anti-Western bloc. That it isn't. It is a bloc basically of emerging countries open to the global South, resonating with those ideas. It's demanding an equitable share in action in the world. In terms of contributing, it's more than willing to do its share on global issues. It calls for peace. It calls for development. It is a grouping which is basically targeting towards the good of the entire humankind. And so let's be very clear on this. This was an important summit. Let's remember that this is the first summit when the enlarged BRICS, enlarged after the Johannesburg Summit of 2023, is meeting. It's also a very important summit because the Russians have invited some 25 or 30 odd countries who they think are important for this particular agenda. And from our bilateral perspective, I think there was a lot happening on the sidelines. The meeting between the Honorable Prime Minister and the President of China, quite apart from the bilateral meeting with the Russians and other bilateral meetings. All in all, a very important meeting of important leaders in the world who are really significant in setting the global agenda. And there is a need for setting up a collaborative and cooperative global agenda. It can't be what only the G7 countries want it done. It is a need of the hour that, there is global cooperation, and the largest grouping, they cooperate with each other. So very important, and I'm happy to say a successful outcome of this Kazan summit.
Okay, I want to quickly talk about some of the key pointers in the declaration that has come out, which is about not just the BRICS grain exchange, which is quite significant, but also the BRICS cross-border payment system, the BRICS clear depository, and also on financial innovation. Now, do you think these kind of things are the ones that keep the West a bit uneasy as to, what's cooking in BRICS, apart from the fact that, there's China and Russia there together, and there's India too, and there's now so many others joining them too?
Absolutely, Gautam. Look, finance is the bulwark, isn't it, of global power. And in various ways, everyone would agree that the world was dollarized a long time back. And now the dollarization is a weapon, and it has been used in such a manner. So when the largest economies in the world, remember, the Chinese are the second largest economy. India is the 5th largest economy. When these large economies all gather together and say, we are willing to look at alternate payments mechanisms, we are willing to look at alternate mechanisms for food supply, which, by the way, is perhaps the most important thing for the global South. Remember, 2 years back, African leaders journeyed all the way to Sochi in Russia to request the Russian president's help in ensuring that Ukrainian grain was lifted, and the UN then was able to barter a deal. So, they certainly have a reason to think that, their hegemonic situation is under challenge. It isn't so. But the need and the push for an equitable and a situation which benefits the entire humankind, that certainly is getting a push forward, and the BRICS have an important role. And I'm happy to say and note that they are fulfilling. Of course, money makes things go round, and so therefore these ideas are important. Now, one more point I want to make, where I think India has played a particularly useful and a big role in the world, which was also recognized in the G20, which is in the area of digital payments. The entire business of trying to make life easy for the common man, common woman, without having to go through the old route of the currency, yet at the same time allowing for a modicum of all of this being above board. Our experiences, I'm sure, were very valuable experiences with the G20 recognized, and I'm happy to say that the BRICS is also on board on digital payments and the entire scenario around the digital economy as we take things forward.
Certainly, and we would like to move things forward on the energy front as well, particularly when it comes to renewable energy and the International Solar Alliance. The Prime Minister Modi has invited every country to join it as well, and I'm sure that will happen in due course. But let's also talk about what they've said on Ukraine, which must have been tricky to come up with that language there, since it was happening in Russia, and Russia is a key founding member of BRICS, and also about West Asia. What do you make of what these leaders had to say about these two conflicts? Excuse me.
So, Gautam, look, we are all aware that in this particular conflict, and one of them, Russia, the host itself, is in some senses a part. We know it. But we also know what other leaders, particularly Prime Minister Modi, have been saying, that this is not a time for war. We have also on the West Asian side tried to reach out to the Israelis and others and say, look, let's try and give diplomacy a chance. Please halt these particular actions which are violent, which are resulting in deaths and so on and so forth. So, crafting, negotiating outcomes is not an easy task by no means. But, do remember the G20 had set a template. The Russians had gone along with the template. Most of the major players in the BRICS were very much, all the major players of the BRICS were part of the G20. So, there was a starting language. And this certainly helped in their coming together. My understanding is that on the issue of both the Ukraine conflict as well as Gaza, there would not have been much, let me say, debate and acrimony. Of course, language would need to have been finessed so as to be able to take care of, not, if I may say so, offending or being diametrically opposed to the ideas which the G7 and others do. But having said this, the major focus was on the economy, the issues which you raised, the financial cooperation which is possible, the solar alliance, renewable energy, each and every one of those things. And in a sense, a much more powerful and a larger voice for the global South coming together. And I think that was particularly important.
Yes, and there's a collective voice for reforming global governance as well through the United Nations and other institutions. But I'm afraid we're completely out of time. So I'll have to say thank you for joining us at the moment, Ambassador Puri.